Okay. Hello. Hello, hello. We are live. Welcome. Welcome to today. Sorry that I'm a little bit blurry. It's not quite daylight here, so don't get the sun right in my face to make me radiant. Before we get started, if you are brand new to my space, whenever I do a live stream, I like to know that you're here and that you're watching. So let me know in the comments that you're watching live, or if you're watching the replay, just let me know that you're here for the replay. So first, I think it's important that I address the conversation head on. Because this morning I woke up at 3:33 a.m., the witching hour. And truth be told, for the last couple of weeks, I've actually been waking up at the same time every day. But I would fight it, and I would fight it horribly. I would wake up and then be like, no, I'll go play on my phone for a little bit. I'll toss and turn in the bed for a while. Oh, I'll let the dog out to pee and then I'll go back to bed. But yesterday I realized that maybe I was waking up for a reason. Maybe there was something awakening inside of me that could only be accessed at 3:33 in the morning. So, I wonder if, 1 second here. Yeah, that's as good as it's gonna get. So today I woke up at 3:33 and I decided to start my morning. I went and made myself a coffee. I took my vitamins, went to the bathroom. I brushed my teeth. I did my rituals. I journaled and pulled out a shamanic oracle card. And as I did all of this, there was something that kept coming alive for me. And if you've noticed that over the last year, as I've been leading myself through the journey of enchantment, that there's always this theme around my relationships. This tug of war of, I want to be single, I want to be in a relationship, I want to be single, I want to be in a relationship. And this tumultuous pain of being in relationships, but the same pain while being single. And it's just going back and forth, back and forth. I've had to excavate every relationship I've been in. I've had to explore what fantasies I've associated to different men, what magic I've dismissed because it didn't fit the story that I wanted it to. One of the most fascinating excavations was the one that took place this morning. Roxy. Because this morning I realized that part of my fear of relationships, my resistance to them, is actually associated to the men that I choose. You see, it's no surprise that over the last decade and a half, almost 2 decades, I guess, that I've chosen unavailable men. And so as I sat with that, this incessant internal drive to find unavailable men, I had to ask myself, what is it that I get out of this? What do I get out of choosing unavailable men? And unavailable stemming from emotionally unavailable, unavailable as in already in relationships, unavailable as in like they work too much and simply don't have the time or capacity for a relationship. I would still choose these men who have no ability to be with me. Even if they desired it, it just wasn't possible. Roxy, quit licking my feet. And so as I started looking at that, like, what is it in me that wants to choose these men? And there was a realization that I will never have to be fully expressed with them. That giving them a sliver of who I am is often more than sufficient. It's often going to put them at their own capacity. They can only take me in small bites. But the idea of having me as a full meal is scary for both them and myself. And so instead, I make myself smaller, more digestible to the unavailable man. Because then, Roxy, you have toys, okay? Go play with those. Because then when I pick an unavailable man and I make myself smaller, at least then I'm digestible. But meanwhile, the rest of me is getting totally avoided. My wants, my desires, my needs, my necessities, my minimum requirements get totally ignored because I make myself digestible for that small space of availability they might have. Okay, enough. Marcus is going ham on my feet. And so as I started to list out some of the relationships that this showed in, where I would bite my tongue and totally ignore a desire I had, where I would accept or I would minimize the things that I really wanted in my life. And that was all in the face of an unavailable man. And so then I looked at, okay, so I have this tendency to pick unavailable men. I do it because I don't have to show up as myself and I get to minimize the things that I want in my life. And you might not look at that. You're like, why would you want to do that? Well, because maybe my desires I felt were a little bit too bold at the time, a little bit too out there, a little too scary for myself to hold. And so what better way to avoid them entirely than to make it seem like the man is the reason why I can't have them. For example, I want to go on dates, but he works all the time, so we can't go on dates. It's an example of unavailability. I want to get married. That guy's already married. Example of unavailability, right? So what I do is those desires that I had get deemed irrelevant, get deemed unimportant because I've already got my eyes set on this unavailable human. And I get to continue that way without him ever seeing that there's anything more than what is on the surface level. He'll never know. He'll never know who I actually am because 50% of my expression was more than enough for him. I choose unavailable men so I don't have to see the 100% of myself either. To see what kind of woman I am in the face of the world. So when we first look at that, right? When many teachers say, well, if you're looking if you're attached to unavailable men, then you need to seek an available man. And that's true. But most of the issue is that witches choose then to put their attention with hyper-available men. Now, hyper-available men are also a great place to park your power. See, the hyper-available man is the one who is definitely available. As soon as you give them a fraction of attention, they're definitely available for you and anything you bring. Roxy, lie down. Hey, lie down, please. Lie down. Hey. So, I'm going to give you an example. A couple of years ago, I was in a program with about 150 different people. And there was this guy who had just decided he was in love with me. And he thought I was the most beautiful, most gorgeous thing he'd ever seen. He confessed his love for me all the time. And when you have someone telling you that they love you, that they think you're beautiful, the initial coaching is like, oh, you just need to be open to receive it. But I want to pay attention to this. Roxy, lie down. Lie down, please. That's the initial coaching, right? You need to be open to receive their compliments. And yeah, you do. But here's the thing. The point isn't that you need to open. It's that you weren't open And what you're witnessing is someone behaving as though you were. This is what's called a glamour. So a glamour in the world of magic is a hyperbole of the truth. It is an external representation of the real thing, but on fucking acid. It's the flashy, it's the thing that is charismatic and seductive for the everyday person, but it is meant to hide the real you. But it contains just enough truth that you can't fight it. That they're like, yeah, that's who she is. See, my glamour is felt. My glamour is when I walk into a room, my sex is tactile. You can feel the wet, you can feel the grit of it. And while that's true, the flavor you taste on your tongue, if I'm glamored, is far more rich than the actual truth within me. Because if I can distract you with that glamour, then you will never ask what is behind it. See, a man who is hyper available, even a woman who is hyper available, is distracted by the glamour because the glamour creates a fantasy. And, you know, for years, I would say to people, I'm like, they have an idea of me that I am not. And my immediate reaction would be to be victimized by it because it is so easy to be victimized by it. But when you take a step back and you actually see, well, how did this happen? It was because you just weren't revealed in the first place. You glamored them, you distracted them, and they bought the bait. The work isn't to learn how to manipulate the glamour so you can get whatever you want. The work is to reveal yourself without the glamour. And the thing is that's actually what scares us. On both spectrums, on the unavailable and the hyper available, that actually revealing ourselves is what terrifies us because we know that those really easy places to park our power are no longer available to us. So for example, when I glamour someone, they become quite obsessive. They already have our whole future planned out. But they plan it out based on this representation of me that they felt. And while my human would really want to blame them and really want to be like, you're a freaking psycho, the truth is they responded to what I called them in with. I called them in with the opportunity to fantasize, to be in a fairy tale land of what will never actually happen. That's a great place for me to park my energy rather than be responsible for it. Because if I was responsible for my power, for my magic, for the truth of who I am and the potency of the potion that I carry, I would let the glamour down entirely. And I would reveal the actual potency of who I am, because inside of that potency, a man who is hyper available realizes that he has zero capacity to be with a woman of my size. If you're someone who likes attention, even if it's the wrong attention, you will forgo your power just to keep in that dynamic, just to keep in that space of off-gassing your magic. Because when you really let it out, they'll fall away. See, this is what I refer to as this is the moths, right? When you first turn on and you first start to like get into your body, you'll realize that there's a lot of moths around you. The moths are the hyperavailable. They are the unavailable. They're the ones who are attracted to you for the glamour that you give, not for the truth that you reveal. See, the moment that you actually reveal who you are, it is so freaking bright that even the moths can't stand it. The moths don't see you as light in the middle of the night. They see you as day. They don't come out. And so the work isn't how do I contort myself and how do I make myself smaller to appear to the unavailable man so that he shifts and sees me as perfectly fit into his life. And how do I just really scare this man away who's hyper available? It's neither. It is neither at all. It is how do I hold my magic so clearly and so potently that the rest have no option but to fall away, because the only thing they see is their truth about the presence in my life. Now, when you do that, it's not saying that there won't be heartbreak, because you may as very well be head over heels in love with the unavailable man. And when you reveal yourself, he'll see that you are too much woman for how much capacity he has. And he'll fall away. And as long as you're focused on him, your heart will break rather than the reality that you're being presented with. You are too much woman for him. Now, it's not to say that the next woman won't be perfect or the right flavor of a potion. It's saying that you, in who you are, the essence of your being, is not something he can hold. And it'll take a moment for you to catch your breath. Typically, what most people do is they'll say, oh, well, he couldn't hold me, so let me go to this guy. Or he can't hold me, so let me go to this guy. And they bounce around instead of saying, why don't I hold myself for a bit? And not hold myself as in keeping closed off from what's possible, but hold the power that I innately have so that the resonant man can come in. The man who's totally chill with being with a fully powerful woman. Who's unwavered in who he is. See, the unavailable man requires the rigidity to stay who he is. So your presence can never be at full capacity because you will fuck all of that up for him. He has no capacity for the truth that you bring him. And you might think, oh, well, I got to get him that piece of truth. No. He may never be ready to feel or hear or see that truth. He may never be ready to taste it for himself, because if he was, he would be available. See, the hyper available man is the same thing. He doesn't want to see the truth of what you bring, of like, you are too much woman for him to handle. But when you arrive handled already, there is no space for the fantasy that the hyper available man needs. And there is no space for the limited capacity that the unavailable man says he has. When you tap into your light, you will gather moths, but it is your responsibility to be brilliant so that only the resonant ones come. Let them all fly away. And a couple of years ago, I was seeing someone who was the sweetest guy. And I only saw him for like a short period of time. But he was so good. Like, he was such a good man. And he was resonant at the time. But then as I started to grow and as I started to evolve, because I revealed every step of the way with him, there was a moment when he realized that the path that I was going on wasn't one he wanted to take. And that's when the end of something actually just feels true. And it might hurt, but it doesn't feel taxing. Because it's the hurt of a loss of someone you care about, not the hurt of a loss that means anything about who you are as a person. There's a distinction. See, as witches, as magical, powerful women, we have a tendency of picking the hyper available and the unavailable as an act of hiding our actual power. You can even think about it back from like Salem witch trials time. If you were a witch and you knew they were being hung, you would have to hide your magic. So what better way to hide it than inside of a man who's unavailable for you, and make yourself small so you fit? Or to make yourself fall into the fantasy of the hyperavailable man and you become something you're not, just to maintain his idea of you. Because his idea of you is not of a powerful witch. It is of a simple stay-at-home mom, a baker. So you maintain the fantasy for him to hide the magic and the power inside of you. Because if you actually came out with it, it did mean life or death. But as long as we continue to live that way, as long as we continue to opt to make ourselves smaller or to fulfill someone else's fantasy, we abandon the magic and power within us. We abandon the truth of who we are and what that has people respond in. See, we think that we're like these big seductive manipulators, but we only are if you stay at that base level where you're still attracting moths. Because when you have a hyper available man, the only thing possible there is to actually manipulate him so you don't go starving. So you feed into the fantasy to get what you need. As long as you choose these kinds of people, you will never choose yourself. And as long as you never choose yourself, you will never be able to step into the full realm of your own power and actually attract someone who's capable of being with you in it. You know, one of my mentors always says, you know, don't take advice from someone who has a relationship you don't want. And that's always kind of rung true for me. And it's been part of my resistance to even releasing enchantment, because I'm like, people are going to see this work and go, oh, but she doesn't even have a relationship. But this work is not about your relationship to acquisition, to getting the man. If I wanted to teach that, I could, because I could get any man that I really wanted. But did I want him? Was always the question. See, enchantment is understanding the extent of your own power. That you could operate at the level of manipulation for the rest of your life and have a pretty decent one, or you could operate at the level of truth and never have to abandon yourself in the process. One of the places that I've really struggled with is looking at some of these other relationships where men wanted to control their powerful women and women let them. The fantasy of the hyper available is a form of control, and you buy into it. You let them have their fantasy at the expense of who you are. So as much as we want to blame the men for how they show up, I mean, really at the end of the day, they respond with the call you've given. You've given the glamour. They respond accordingly. The glamour of you being small and digestible and will fit perfectly into an unavailable man's life is a glamour. It is a facade. It is pieces of truth made into a hyperbole. You're lovely, but now you're super lovely. The fantasy is a hyperbole that you are adaptable. It really doesn't matter, because in the face of both of these things, it's all glamored. And when you show up with the glamour, you will never actually feel seen. And so the only thing you can do is feel victimized. You're victimized by the unavailable men in your life. Why can't you find yourself a good man? You're victimized by the hyper available men in your life, because why can't you just find a sane man? You're victimized because you're getting to see what the response to your glamour is. And rather than just take the glamour down entirely, you try to perfect it. getting more tight, getting more rigid, becoming the perfect trope of a good woman. Or you get tight and hard and don't let anyone in your heart at all. Both sides, your heart is broken, not because of the men you interact with or the experiences you have, but because how quickly you choose to abandon yourself. And unfortunately, I know that spot a little too well. I know the spot of having to bite your tongue because you believe things are dangerous rather than becoming bigger and bolder. I know what it's like to let men live their fantasies through you instead of you being with the reality of your own magic. At the base level, you will find yourself surrounded by moths. It's up to you if you want to go deeper. It's up to you if you want to go beyond the DMs from guys with their dick pics. It's up to you if you want to go beyond the relationships with men who just got out of long-term relationships and aren't really looking for anything serious. It's up to you if you are going to continue to fulfill the fantasy of men who are only looking for things that are quite serious, instead of you maintaining integrity to your own medicine, to your own magic, to your own expression in the world. And the thing is that this does not happen overnight. I've been working a lifetime on this, but the truth is that only in the last year have I done anything to flex the muscle of it, to thaw my heart, to open it, to not take the responses of my own open heart personally, to see how even in my opening that people fall away, and to accept that when they do, it's a filter that was necessary. See, moss as a medicine is a filter. It is removing anything that is toxic because it simply cannot survive if it's present. But what you face is your attachment to that toxicity. Anything in saturation is toxic. You want to be saturated in nothing but pleasure, but then you lack the depth. You want to be saturated in depth, but then you lack the joy. All of these things in any high frequency are too much on the body. It's not night nor day. It's not good nor bad. It's the interludes, the dusk and the dawn, the middle periods, where you actually have a sense of self and willingness to reveal who you are in the world and let people have their own reactions to it, because frankly, not everyone's going to be here to receive you, and that's okay. But you just reveal yourself more and more and let people have their own sovereign reactions in response to that, because your mere presence at the most revealed point can only invoke truth in another person. That your most revealed may actually be the most confronting for someone else. It is not your responsibility to hide them from that confrontation. It is your responsibility to continue to reveal yourself until they're willing to accept the confrontation for themselves. You don't force it. You don't manipulate it. You become the invitation. See, as I'm working more with enchantment and I'm getting worked by it in 1,000 different ways, the more I realize how much of this work is about choice and invitation. See, when people often teach about seduction, they say seduction is manipulation, and I counter that. I say if it's manipulation, it's not seduction. Because seduction is an invitation that someone always has the sovereign choice to respond to. Enchantment is an invitation that someone always has the sovereign choice to respond to. The invitation is to truth. So if you are enchanting and someone can see something for themselves that they were unable to before, you cannot expect that that new unseen thing is something that they wanted to see. You can only trust that it was yours to reveal. And so, as I mentioned, this work is not overnight. It is a slow, it is a nearly overwhelming process when done alone. Because when you're alone journeying through this, it feels heavier than it needs to be. It feels like you can't breathe. It feels lonely. Because as things that are untrue fall away, you may not be present to all the things that are, and so you might only see loss. You'll miss the things that are reclaiming you. You'll miss the fact that your magic is starting to spill out into ways that it needed to for years, but just simply wasn't able to. I don't want you to go through this particular work alone. I invite you to do it in community. I invite you to take the slow journey through whatever it is you need to get rid of the fantasy and fairy tales you think you need to maintain and consistently reveal who you actually are. And it's a lot easier when you're doing that with others who are doing the exact same. So this is where I invite you to feel into your own enchantment, to feel into all the ways that you hide your magic behind the idea that you need to be smaller or that you need to fulfill someone else's ideas, where you become disenchanted because you are just a little scared of what will happen in the face of your full expression. This is your invitation to alchemize that fear into potent power. To let the things that are not yours to receive fall away and open to what has always been ready for you. And if you can feel the call inside of you to maybe do this work in a coven of women, then send me a message. Enchantment is now open for enrollment. And in this 1 year long journey, you and your other witch sisters will go through the journey of melting your Ice Queen heart to unlock the power that you've kept hidden. You will burn every fairy tale you thought you needed to maintain and reveal the magic that was always already there. Inside this container, there'll be coaching as well as ritual. Because if there's one thing that I've learned is that in community, it is way easier to do this work, but also in complete rest into universe, source, that you will always be taken care of as long as you are living in your truest and deepest truth. Ritual is required as much as conscious breakdown. That embodiment and taking care of our vessels is just as important as tending to the thoughts in our mind. So while we're revealing the magic of your true essence, we'll also reveal the magic that was already available in your everyday life. Through the way that you cook, through the way that you interact with your plants, through the way that you interact with the stars and the animals around you. But this conversation itself is only the beginning. The beginning of hidden witches coming out to realize that they were powerful the whole time, that they never needed to hide. Because no one would ever be so foolhardy enough to think that they could drown something so infinitely powerful. To burn something so eternally immortal. If you're feeling called to this journey, send me a message. Applications begin in my DMs with what is resonating for you. What inside of you is being itched, scratched, cuddled, snuggled. And we'll go from there. For everyone else who's still watching yet either not feeling resonant to join enchantment, but still feeling the teaching in this lesson today, I invite you to leave in the comments just a note of what you're leaving with. What's something that stuck for you? What opened in your life just by hearing this conversation? I'd love to hear it. Otherwise, have an amazing day. Thank you for acknowledging the fuzziness of my camera and the inability for me to correct that right now. But I look forward to hearing from you. And I cannot wait to open this coven. Talk to you soon.